So it started last September. I think it started last September. It's kind of difficult to discern the origin point. It's one of those things that one becomes aware of its presence, but never its appearance. Anyway, this one started, I think it was September. It might have even been months before that. I really don't know. How many of you here are familiar with the term earworm? Well, most of you. Good. For those of you who aren't, let me assure you that earworm is a metaphor and not actually the condition of having an invertebrate in your ear. And now I must apologize for putting that image in your head. An earworm, according to the Gospel of Wikipedia, is a form of involuntary cognition that manifests as a catchy or memorable bit of music that continuously occupies a person's mind. You know, it's that commercial jingle that you can't stop hearing in your head even when it's not playing. It's that catchy and probably very soon to be annoying pop song that you're humming along to as you do your chores. It's the tune you start singing when you get in the shower. The point is, it's stuck there. And generally, you have no idea how it got there or why it's so sticky. Once infected with such earworms, I have found a number of strategies to rid myself of them. Perhaps you have your own. My first is just to wait it out. It's kind of like a cold, right? It's kind of miserable, but it's going to go away in a few days, and you'll be fine. If that doesn't work, my next strategy is to try to drown it out with other music, right? And I figure I can unstick the earworm by overwhelming my brain with alternatives. Doesn't always work, but it's worth a shot. My third strategy for unsticking an earworm is to go ahead and just play the song, presuming it's a song you have access to and not some radio ad jingle that you have to sit around and wait for. My thought there is that perhaps by listening to the same song on repeat over and over and over again, my brain gets whatever it wants from the tune and moves along. I suppose if you're musically inclined, at least more so than I, you could play the song on your chosen instrument until the earworm goes away. Although I have found by singing it out loud, it tends to get stickier. So I'm not so certain playing it on an instrument would help. Perhaps my musical friends could deny or affirm that. In any case, most earworm infections last for me at least a few days, a week at most, but not this one. This one has been in my head for months, perhaps even most of this year. I sing it in the shower every morning. I sing it in the car 3 times between my house and this church. Its rhythms bop in the back of my head as I write, as I read, as I cook dinner. And none of my disinfection or eviction strategies have worked thus far, so it occurs to me that I have one last-ditch effort to try. I'm going to preach about it. Maybe it'll work. So I don't think I'm going to reveal anything new to you when I state the following. We live in a media information-soaked culture. Probably not a shocking statement here. An information-soaked culture, saturated, immersed, inundated, deluged, engulfed, drowning. I love all my thesaurus. my synonyms. We have access to more information and data and images and news than perhaps ever in the history of humankind. It wasn't always this way, as most of you know. Even in my lifetime, it wasn't terribly long ago that most folks' daily dose of information came from either a morning or evening newspaper, unless you were like really ambitious and got both a morning and evening newspaper, and or the evening newscast on television. One could remain pretty well informed about one's community, country, and world by reading the paper over the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee and watching Cronkite for 30 minutes in the evening. If you needed more than that, your local library could hook you up. But then, cable, CNN, 24-hour news cycles made access even easier, if not a bit repetitive. Then we got the internet, followed by social media, and now everyone is an expert on everything, and they never shut up. What was once a media culture of a tall glass of water daily has become akin to trying to drink not from a fire hose. It's the metaphor you thought I was going for, right? No, this is drinking from the floodgates at Hoover Dam. We're drowning in information. Now, I want to be clear. I do believe that in a democracy, it is critical to have an informed populace. Ignorance is really easy to oppress. So we must be a people that understands the information that is being presented, a people that carefully discern truth from lies, and can objectively weigh narratives against personal and communal values, all with an awareness of the contingency of their understanding, that is, recognizing that others receive information differently and assess it through their own discernments and values. Which is to concede my own bias towards information. If to be integral parts of democratic society, we need information and experience to guide our thinking and therefore our actions, the more information is better than less information. And this is also to concede my bias to what an education is for, by the way, against our prevailing culture. I do not believe or agree that education is to create employable people. It's to develop the intellectual skills to understand, to discern, and to objectively consider the information, the ideas, the events of everyday life, and to know one's own limitations in that work. But still, this sense of discerning for oneself, of critical thinking, of objective, rational assessment of the world is in part what drew me to Unitarian Universalism, right? Rather than the just trust me version of religious experience, that is, rather than just believing what we're told by so-called holy men, really? And in my experience, there were almost always men, problematic as that is. Unitarian Universalists invite us into our objective, rational discernments of all things we might call religious, whether that be scripture or doctrine or ritual. Let's apply our sacred scientific method to our spiritual lives. This is what attracted me to this faith. Don't leave my brain at the door. Bring it with me. When I was a chaplain at the Iowa Methodist Hospital, one of my colleagues and I were discussing, and we were struggling with some of the work of chaplaincy, and our supervisor was complaining that we were too much in our heads. And she said, Greg, I've spent a lifetime cultivating this brain. I love my brain. And I'm like, I agree. So what could be better for all of humanity than to have not only a well-informed rational polis in our democracy, but also have a well-informed, objective, and rational religious congregation? Wouldn't the world be a better place? And here you can read my further biases. As religious and democratic people, we need to see both the evil and the good in the world, not to hide from the truth that both are evident. As religious and democratic people, we must remain awake and aware of this slow parade of fears that marches by our field of vision every day, the fears that manifest in our own hearts and those that inundate our media feeds. By the way, I still hate that term, feed, media feed, like we're ever nourished by that. Anyway. I myself have tried my best to stay awake, to keep my eyes open, to bear witness to all of it, all the pain and suffering this world can generate, as well as all the compassion and love that emerges nonetheless. And I believe that you all do as well. Which is perhaps why a particular earworm has gotten stuck in my head. This is from the musical prophet Jackson Browne and his 1972 hit, Dr. My Eyes. Whatever it was that put this song in my head this past year, it has resisted my attempts to dislodge it, and I am convinced that it is trying to tell me, to remind us of what we stand to lose in our bias towards our open-eyed, clear, and objective analysis of the world around us. The poet begins, Doctor, my eyes have seen the years and the slow parade of fears without crying. And now I want to understand. I have done all that I could to see the evil and the good without hiding. You must help me if you can. Doctor, my eyes. Tell me what is wrong. Was I unwise to keep them open for so long? It's a short song. Like I said, 3 times between my house and here. It's 4 3-lined verses and 3 versions of the chorus. The whole thing clocks in at a radio-friendly 3 minutes and 18 seconds. You know, because that used to be the standard. Nobody cares anymore. I don't know how I heard the song. I don't know how I listened to the song 50 years ago. 50 years ago. Ouch. But this year, perhaps I finally heard it. Here we have someone who has followed the path that I and many of us here would argue is the best course. Be awake, be aware of the world, bear witness to all the pain and all the joy, be present to the slow parade of fears, but most of all, stay objective, stay rational. Do not, whatever you do not cry about it. Do not feel anything about it. Because no problems in this world have ever been solved by emotion. And we know this because Aristotle and Plato, and who's going to argue with them? Aristotle and Plato taught us that emotions were below the dignity of man. I don't know how they felt about women. Actually, I do. They didn't like them. Because crying is weakness. And the world needs strength. Because boys don't cry. Because crying makes people, including ourselves, uncomfortable. Don't cry about it. Stay awake, stay aware. But whatever you do, don't feel anything about it. To which our prophet, Mr. Brown, seems to say, hold on a minute. There's a consequence to that. Our poet's eyes have stayed open for so long that they can no longer see the beauty in the world. They can no longer see the sky. They can no longer even see the people as they are, full of their own fears and sorrows and struggles and victories and joys and loves. Friends, is this us? Is this you? Is it me? Have we become so certain of our objective rationality that we have ignored our emotional self, that we have taught ourselves not to cry, not to feel it all? And if so, what are we losing? What have we lost? And can we get it back? The songwriter begs, just say if it's too late for me. Here at the threshold of another calendar year, we often take stock of who we have been in the prior years and who we imagine ourselves to be in the coming one. The calendar before us looks like a blank slate, a chance for change, a chance to grow. I'm somewhat neutral on New Year's resolutions, most of which are lovely aspirations, but we have not developed the habits to make them stick. And despite my past personal failures at keeping those resolutions, I think there is something of value in claiming them anyway. I think our resolutions, even if we end up not being terribly resolute, invite us to reflect upon the limits of time that we have in this life and aspire to breathe toward the kind of life we dream of. So this year, I'm inviting myself, and you as well, perhaps, to relearn how to cry. Yep, I want you all to cry more. To feel more. To drop the pretense of righteous outrage and just let the tears flow. Because our eyes, our vision depends on it. If we are to see the beauty and the truth of this world, we first have to learn to cry. And if this sounds like a dreadful idea, I return us to Jackson Browne's song, whose heartbreaking lyric is encased in a tune that radiates joy. Dare I say it's even danceable? In the contrast between the music and the lyric, this contrast that he's created between the music and the lyric, I hear a kind of hope, a kind of possibility, even a redemption. The skill of the songwriter in this is a testament to the wholeness of our lives that we yearn for, to be whole, to be complete, and awakened to love. So in this year, may we all learn to cry, to feel, and perhaps to dance a little. Amen.